All right. Good day, everyone. Today is January 9th, 2026. And you were watching or maybe listening to Page Break podcast with Rich and Brian.
Hello.
Today we have a very special guest from the native land, Chicago, the Windy City, which I heard it was pretty windy last night. We have author Lynn Williams here with us, and we're going to talk about her latest book titled Fathers and Sons: Raising Boys Through Dinosaurs, Testosterone, and Girls, which I just absolutely love that title. And your cover is fantastic as well. So, Lynn, thank you very much for being here. It's exciting. We're excited to have you. So thank you for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, we're
Thanks
pumped
for
you're
having me.
here. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a Chicago fan, the city anyway, and not really the sports teams. I don't like them at all, but I do like the city. I recently did the architecture tour, like on the boat through the river. And my favorite thing on the architecture tour was um, one of the big catalog companies. All of the big catalog companies were out of Chicago at one time, but
Mhm.
one of them, and I don't remember which one, when they closed down, people went in to like clean up the warehouse, and there were hundreds and hundreds of pairs of roller skates. And at first they thought, oh, well, this is like excess stock that they didn't sell. But what it was is the guy made his employees wear roller skates so they could get around the warehouse faster and ship things out quicker.
I
Back
wonder,
back
was
when it
that
was
Montgomery Ward? Was it
it
Montgomery
was
Ward?
Montgomery. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds right.
That's brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, because you remember you had and we were Brian and I have an 80s podcast, so this is a very 80s thing to say. But you would get the catalog and then you would write the stuff on the order form and you would mail a check. And then Montgomery Ward would get they'd get the envelope. And then they would just hand that slip off to somebody who would skate around the warehouse, which was massive, by the way. I mean, it takes up like a city block. So anyway, that's my Chicago story for the day.
That's a great story. I used to work for Montgomery Ward for just a hot second, but yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay, well, yeah,
I will
I
give
love it.
since you gave a Chicago story, I will give one. I've been there many times. I'm a huge sports fan. Um, I remember I was sitting. So, for anyone listening or watching, if you've ever been to Wrigley Field, or if you plan to go to Wrigley Field, obviously the bleacher bombs, that's the big thing when you go watch a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. And you got to get there. If you want to be in the front, you got to get there early, and you basically race up this like spiral type of a staircase, to get to where then you go down into the bleachers. So we got there really early. I think 4 or 5 of my friends are with me. This was probably 20 years ago, I'd say. And I have this, like, I'm a sports enthusiast. I have memorabilia, and you can actually see behind me. I've got just stuff everywhere. My wife loves it.
I bet.
Obviously being funny there. She don't think it's funny. So the whole time, and we got down. So we're literally in the first row. So the brick is right there, the ivy. And the whole time I'm like, I would love to grab a piece of this ivy, just pull a little leaf off, put it in a little plastic case, and just set it on my shelf. I'd love to just have. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, there's thousands and thousands, if not millions, of little pieces. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
And
you're going
I
to
swear
prison.
to you, I wait till
You're
about
going right to jail.
I wait till about the seventh inning, and I'm reaching my hand, and it's like I got caught hand in the cookie jar, whistle. Like, I see you again, you're out of here. Like, they were watching, like, all those people, and they spotted me just like that. So I'm like putting my head down and feel like I just got reprimanded by my grandparent or something. And so anyway, that's when I think of Chicago, Wrigley Field, I think of that story when I was this close to getting a piece of ivy, but it did not work. So if you are listening, fellow
Don't try it.
baseball enthusiasts, do not try to take a piece of the ivy. It will not work. And yeah, as Sealand said, you may go to jail. So, but
All
anyway,
right.
okay. Well,
We
we
got some
always talk
Chicago
about trying to keep
stories.
these short. And Rich and I have a problem with telling too many of our own stories. So
Yeah.
let's get into C. Lynn's journey. So let's talk about how this first started. You want to just kind of give a background about who you are from a professional side and how this book kind of plays into what you try to portray on a daily basis?
Sure. So, this is my sixth book. I have a what I call a stay sane series because if you're a parent, that's really your goal is to stay sane through all of this. And I had written, my mother and daughter, mother and son, blended family, all of that. And my husband kept saying, you really got to write the dad series. And I said, I'm not a dad. I don't have to write a dad series. And so we went through that for a little bit. And then what happened? Something happened. And I kept having, like dreams of my brother and my dad and just different experiences, which is normally when it's time for me to write that next book that I'm having these experiences about. And so I wrote about a year ago, I wrote an outline of what I thought the chapters should be, but I still didn't know what the content was. And so earlier this year, or earlier last year, actually, we're in 26, right? In 25, um, I was busy, but the words started coming to me. And so um, stories that I didn't necessarily know, but you know how sometimes it just happens. My own stories, my friends, people that I coach, parents, they all kind of converged. And at one point in my life, I had taught at a boys' high school. So some of those stories came back and the interactions with the dads and the sons. So it came together really interesting last year.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I know we've
And
talked about this before. Sorry, Rich.
no, go ahead.
But I remember the first time you contacted Genesis. Um, I was on vacation, and it was a beautiful, you know, it was probably 80, 82 degrees on a. We were just getting ready to go down to the beach, and I was like, well, I'm going to answer this email real quick, and then we set up a quick call, and I called you, and I'm sitting there under this little tiki area. My wife went to get a coffee or something, and I vividly remember it because it changed so fast. Wind went crazy, pouring rain started coming down, and I'm just like, do I like I didn't know you then, so I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm like, not really. I don't want to sound like we're not professional here. And I'm like, do I try to run inside and take the chance of getting drenched and you hearing the all the rain coming down on my phone, or do I? And I kind of like huddled up under this little tiki thing, and I'm trying to talk, and I'm thinking like, this probably sounds terrible. She's not going to want to work with us. And anyway, I vividly remember our first conversation because it was so not what I wanted, for like a first impression with a phone call with you. But it obviously worked out because here we are today, and we had a good call, and as they say, the rest is history. So, okay, Rich, I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So obviously a book about fathers and sons and kind of that relationship strikes a chord with Brian and I because we both have sons. I've just got one. I've got three daughters, but I've got a son, and he's grown and getting ready to get married. He graduates college May 8th and gets married May 15th.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so yeah, and but looking through the book and kind of the highlights of it, one thing I wanted to know just from a 30,000-foot view, very broad. Can you give the audience kind of an overview of what you were we'll dive deeper into the specifics in a minute, but just kinda give an overview of what you were thinking going into writing and what you were hoping to accomplish with it?
So I think, well, when I originally started, um, I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to accomplish, which is why I didn't start and dive in right away. So, once I had a little more of a vision, what I noticed and I continue to notice is um, the language or lack of language between fathers and sons. And so what I mean by that is the expectation that men have of their boys is real. There's no question about it. And yet, there's not a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of discussion, short of this is what I told you to do, or you're my son, and any of those kind of mandates, but nothing like, nothing nurturing. Um, and I use that word lightly, but when I think of what was happening was that I continued to see stories in today's news about boys who had gone off the deep end, had done various things. And I said, usually when the report would come out, it would be a mother, but very seldom did you see a dad during that time. And so I said, I wonder what the influence is. I know from my family what my dad meant to us, but I wonder if not having a dad, how profound that is in a boy's life. And not being a therapist or anything like that, but just some of the years, just my brother and my father when my parents divorced, what they went through. And so I wanted to really get into that. And the more I got into it, the more there were so many emotions. And I'm sure that they were emotions that I experienced as a result of watching the two of them do what they did growing up. But it was also for you know, Dad, if you had just explained that to me, or, I love you, but I don't know how to talk to you, or, you're not open to me, or any of those kinds of conversations. All of that came rushing at me last year. And I did the best I could with like writing it as quickly as possible. But the message over and over was, I really love you. And I don't know how to show you that because I wasn't shown that growing up. So that's
Mm.
the 30,000 view, if you will. There are
Yeah.
lots more views, but that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when I went through it, the thing that stuck out to me was it was, I think I almost said 2025, like 2026, I guess. It's easy to be a friend, you know, you want to be a buddy, you don't, but a parent is different. Being there, being present, not just being in the same location, but actually being a part of their life and feeling like they're learning from you and they're, like you said, able to ask for advice or whatever it is, but just being present is a big part of what you're writing about. Have you had people read this book that have has that been what most people take away from this, or do you get other viewpoints from people that have read this as well?
So I've been doing a couple of book signings, and the last one we actually were able to have a conversation with guys. Um, some of them had brought their sons, small group, but I'd like this conversation all over the world. And so they talked about their experience with their sons. And some of them, like you said, I don't want to just be dad. I want to understand what you're going through. I'm still going to walk you through it from a discipline, all of that kind of thing, experience. But I want to understand who you are, and not just that you're my son and you should do what I want you to do. So that conversation came up. And I think the other thing that came up, I had different generations. So an older generation person spoke about how, like, you did what you were told and there was no room for discussion. Well, that was kind of the generation I grew up in. I don't
Hmm.
know about you guys, and yet when I got into my 20s, my dad and I really developed our relationship. So I could talk to him really straight, and he did as well. And there was so much more that if you just, I think that part of the discussion is I can't show you who I really am. I'm vulnerable, Dad. This is Dad. I'm vulnerable, but you don't need to see that side. I need you to grow up and be a man, whatever that means.
Hmm.
And so I'm not going to show you how difficult it was for me, or the fact that I have fears, or I don't always know what the answer is. That's okay. And that's what I'm trying to get across. You don't have to know everything. Like those commercials that they say, you don't have to be an everything parent. You just have to be there, and be open. So, and I think that's
Yes.
hard. I think that's hard.
Sure. Yeah. Being open and not and admitting you don't have all the answers is pretty tough. One of the takeaways I had, and it's interesting because this ties into a conversation I was having with my wife last week, because my kids are grown. As a matter of
Mhm,
fact, just for this podcast, I broke out the promoted to grandpa mug. So I have two grandkids and about to have a third.
mhm,
Um, so, but parenting sons changes pretty drastically from dinosaurs to girls. Like
Mhm.
there's a different way so this is the conversation. I'd love to get your take on this because this is a conversation I had with my wife driving back from the holidays. Is what is my I was asking her, what is my role now as my kids are adults? Because like I have one married kid. I'm about to have three married kids. They do not, and my son, they don't look at dad's advice the same way. But at the same time, when I step back and look at it, like I see decisions that they make, and they're still essentially kids to me. And I'm like, that kid is an idiot. What happened? Like, they're doing a real dumb thing. And when my son was 5, he really liked to blow stuff up a lot. And so there were times when I would see him, like enough to where he threw a hammer through a can of spray paint one time and came inside completely. The only thing that wasn't red were just the insides of his eyes. And so there are times when I see him walking with a hammer at 5, and I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do in this scenario.
Mhm.
Like I've got to intervene. Now he's walking around with a proverbial hammer. And
Mhm.
I'm like, what's my responsibility in this? Because he's 22, he's pretty smart. He's about to, he's a good kid. But I'd love to get your take on like how that relationship morphs from 5 to 25 because it's I don't know how much to insert myself now at this point.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? That's an excellent I love that question because my husband is excellent at that. He he doesn't give advice. He just doesn't. What he does, because all of our kids are grown. We got 5 grandkids. But he I've learned from him because mom, problem solver. But he kind of says, well, what do you think you should do? Or have you thought about it? Such a, and I think, people think that once your kids are grown, you're done, but you're not done. Like, like you are hopefully a trusted advisor. And so trusted advisors may not always give advice, but they're close enough that you don't feel the adult child doesn't feel stupid asking whatever they have to ask. And if they don't ask you, I mean, like I feel like if you set up the relationship early on, and I know I have another point after that, but if you set it up early on where just come and there's nothing that's stupid. You can talk to me about anything. If they understand that from the beginning, then even when they're 22, 35, 40, they will talk to you in such a way that is, hey, so what about this? And it's not, and I often will say, like I had a tough conversation yesterday with my son, and I reminded myself, yes, you're his mother, but you are his trusted advisor. And so he doesn't need you to tell him what to do. Just, kind of ask him questions. So that's what I think. Please don't let go of him. 22 is still 5 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I
Do you know what I
agree.
mean?
The temptation for me, and that's great advice, because the temptation for me is I've been very maybe they don't love it. I think they do, but very engaged with my kids. Um, you know, I'm at everything. I'm there for everything. We're very close. My daughters and I have all three of them have a very close relationship, and my son and I we're extremely close. But my default, especially with my girls, because they're now the two older ones, they have another man in their life,
Mhm,
and I kind of think those other guys are knuckleheads sometimes.
mhm,
And so my default is to just
mhm,
pop my head in the room and go, "Hey, that thing that your guy just told you, that was dumb. Don't do that." And, you gotta fight that.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
different with so anyway, that's great insight because it's he's still kind of the decision maker right now for they're engaged and buying cars and houses and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, to kind of guide him to the answer instead of saying, "Hey, man, this is what you need to do," because that's kind of my default personality is
Oh, definitely mine too. Yeah, I
when I
agree with
walk.
you, but I've learned from, like I said, my husband who had a much just a really easy, because that's how his dad was. His dad, kind of guided them that way. But I think that when we just offer advice, then it's a whole different story. Especially if they don't want to take it, then you're mad, or there's space that doesn't have to be. So
It's great
Yeah.
advice.
Um, one thing, real quick story, Rich, you will love this. So talking about advice and stuff, we over Christmas we had a card or board game, card game, whatever, and I think it was called I think it's called How Well Do You Know Your Family? And I have two boys, 20 and 17, and I think they were both playing. The 17-year-old, and basically someone just has to spit it out, whoever says it first, and then the guy, whoever is being asked the question, they raise their hand like, yeah, that was right, and then that person gets the card. So the question was, what's the best advice you've ever been given? And um, I knew the answer. I didn't say it. I was just waiting to hear some other feedback. And finally, I said, "Don't be an idiot." And his name's Davis, and Davis goes, "Yep," and hand me the card. Rich is smiling because we got that from The Office. Dwight, he's like, it's like, or Michael said, "What's he say? Like, what's the best advice I've ever given you?" And
Yeah,
Dwight's
don't
like,
be an
"Don't be an
idiot.
idiot." And then the
Hurts my
camera
feelings
pans
every
on him.
time. Best advice I've ever
He's
given.
like,
Yeah.
if I'm ever in a situation, I think, would an idiot do this? And if the answer is yes, I will not do that thing. So
okay,
that's what my
yeah.
7-year-old, that's been in his brain, since probably 11 years old. Like, would an idiot do that? Because I probably shouldn't do it. Now he still does idiotic things, but maybe not as many as he could do if he didn't, have that in his head to think, okay, I'm not going to be an idiot. Um, but so let's get kind of toward the process of the publishing. You did some books before, and now you've been working with us. Um, how did you feel like the process in general of putting the book together and the steps and all that? Everything go like, were you like, okay, this is going the way I want, or I'm confused, or I don't feel like I'm being told what I need to do? Kind of walk maybe some potential authors through that process.
Oh, sure. Sure. So I enjoy the process. I was notified pretty much every step of the way. Um, you use technology a little more than any other publisher that I've worked with before. So we had to accept the work in like a Google kind of document, and I think that that was good because I could always look back at that on my own. So that was cool. Um, I think the only other thing that I would like to include would be a a way to converse. Like, how in some of the apps today you can do a chat. So
Hmm.
sometimes if I'm not sure I'm on point with something, then I can go to their chat and just ask. And usually I'll ask for a live person. So, but I thought the process was great. I did. I Some of the things I haven't done before, and I mentioned that to you, like
Hmm.
the Ingram process. But all in all, it was great. And I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that because, I'm still writing, so I need more. Yeah.
right. I remember going back, we were kind of going back and forth on the cover for a bit. And then when the cover, which you guys will see here in the bio, or if you go check Amazon or wherever, um, it's just one of my. I mean, we've worked on I don't know how many thousands of books over the years. Rich and I have been doing publishing since 2010, so we've seen a lot of covers. Most of them, I would say, that's a good cover. Some of them I cringe at. But I will also say one thing about what we do is we advise, our production team advises. We don't force an author. We don't say,
Mhm.
no, you're not doing that one. Here's your cover. So the author has the say of what they want, and some authors
Mhm.
don't always take the advice that we give. But overall, I like a majority of our covers. Your cover would easily be in the top 1% of covers that I've seen come across here in the past 15, 16 years. I think it summarizes your book so well. So, congrats on that because it's awesome. I really, 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 do love it.
Thank you. Thank you very
Um,
much.
and I think, it's like, it's almost like a dating app, when if people scrolling through whatever the apps are, like, if you don't like what you see, nope, I'm not interested. So projecting that image out there is so important, and I think you definitely nailed that. So congrats on that. Um, but anything you want to kind of close out on as I know we try to keep this to
We're
20
I
minutes, and I blame
we're a
Rich
little
and
o
I for going over. So
Yeah, I actually have one more thing I wanna ask before we let you do some closing statements, because I think this is my favorite thing to hear authors say, because I know other prospective authors listen to this podcast. Um, do you have so writing is sometimes it's enjoyable and it's free flowing and you love it. There's some days when you're like, "Oh, I'm stuck," or whatever it might be, and I'd rather do something else. In those I'd rather do something else days, do you have any tips or tricks for new authors to help them get through that and get words on the page? Because it's not when things are easy that we need advice, it's when things get tough. But you've written several books, so you might have some insight that maybe a new author doesn't have.
Yeah, I like that question. And it's real because like you said, you have a writer block. So I think that when you start writing, that you have a space that you go to, you know, ideally, not all over the place. But I'm not an all over the place person. So I have a space that I go to, but I also write every day. Like 5 days, out of the 7 days, 5 days a week, I write something. And and it's interesting because my husband said, "Well, what if you're still writing after the time?" And I have a time period. So if I say, for example, I'm going to write 40 minutes, then at the end of 40 minutes, no timers or anything like that. That's too much for me. But at the end of that, I stop and then I come back. And I don't force myself to sit there for hours at a time because I don't want to do that. It's not enjoyable. But I do make a commitment to myself and to the book to write on it, like I say, every day, 5 days a week. And sometimes, I mean, you don't have to necessarily write in order. So, you know, uh, people will say, well, you got to write, the first chapter, like go in consecutive order. You don't. You write whatever you feels right. The other thing is I pray about it too. So, before I get ready to write, I say a prayer so that whatever help I'm getting comes and helps me, because like in this topic, as I mentioned to you, I'm not a dad, I'm not a boy. So like, where is this information coming from beside my initial family? So, but that's what I would recommend for new authors.
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, no, that is that's definitely good. Um, well, uh, so people can find you on, like we said, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Google, wherever books are sold. Um, you know, Obviously physical copy, ebook, all that kind of stuff. Any type of social media, do you put content out there for people to see on a daily or weekly basis that you'd like the audience to know about?
I haven't done that. I usually, I may have a question I may put out, and I'm on social media, Instagram,
Hmm.
TikTok, LinkedIn. But I'll put something out. Um, and lately it's been the book signings, but I'll ask a question. Like what. So this I got to do that. I got to tell you that. So my understanding of guys, very few are emotional enough to write their true feelings on social media. So one of the things is when I would put posts out, unless I knew specifically and tagged specifically, people will read it, but you don't know it because they didn't tag it, they didn't like it or whatever. So I'm really careful with how I talk about the relationship with fathers. Um,
Yeah.
so I may go to a page where it's dads talking, like a dad group, and then I'll put some information in. But I just find the audience is a little different. You guys are different than women. We tell everything. If we're mad, you know it. The whole
Yeah.
world knows it. But guys,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily see that. So,
Yeah, Brian and I don't post our feelings so much on social media that we don't post ever about anything because neither one of us have social media. So
okay.
that's
Okay.
we're but yeah, I agree with you. It's a complicated emotions are a complicated thing to navigate for us. We are we could probably go on another 30 or 45 minutes. We're over time here, so I'm just gonna uh round us off. It's been an awesome conversation. I think the book is great. I'm going to link everything in the description because I think that resources like this are important for guys like me. So if there are other
Thank you.
guys like me listening, this resource is an important one. Definitely check it out. But Rich and Brian, Page Break Podcast, we are out.